20, these three verses actually constitute the fifth question of the sages at Naimisharanya. If you remember, I explained before, did I send this document to everybody? I don't think I did. I don't think I have everybody's, well, maybe I do have everyone's emails. This is a nice little document I extracted from somewhere, can't remember where. The 6 questions of the sages. Regarding the 6 questions of the sages, in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam 121, Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur has summarized the 6 questions that the sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami as follows. What is the ultimate benefit for mankind? What is the essence of all Shastras? For what reason did the Lord take his birth from Devaki? Describe the wonderful deeds of the Lord when he assumes the forms of Brahma, Rudra, and so on for the purpose of creating, maintaining, and destroying the universe. Fully describe the activities of Lord Hari's incarnations within this universe. Where has Dharma taken shelter after Krishna has retired to his own abode? As Srila Jiva Goswami has commented on these 6 questions, 4 are answered in chapter 2 and 2 are answered in chapter 3. Here are the questions and the places in which they are answered according to commentators on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then it goes through. Question 1, what is the absolute and ultimate good, Ashraya, for people in general? That question is asked in the 9th verse of the first chapter. And it is dealt with in... I should share the screen, shouldn't I? I'm sorry. I'm very amiss there. I should share the screen so you can see all this while I'm talking about it. Where are we? There. 6 questions. Where are we? Why did that come up? That's the wrong document. Sorry. 6 questions. There we go. Here we go. So, can you see this?
Yeah.
Yes, but we can see it.
Okay.
So, question 1 is in verse 9 of the first chapter. What is the absolute and ultimate good for people in general? After describing that devotional service to Sri Krishna was the essence of the Shastras, Suta explains that the ultimate benefit for people in general is to become free from material bondage and develop love of God through devotional service offered only to Krishna or his plenary parts. This is dealt with, especially in the 2nd chapter, verses 6 and 7, but also actually until verse number 27. This is being dealt with a lot. Then question 2 is found in verse 11. What is the essence of all Shastras? And throughout the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavatam, and especially in verses 6 and 7, and continuing on to text 28, the Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is confirmed as the only object of worship, and establishing one's lost relationship with him in love and service through devotional service is proclaimed as sovereign substance of the Vedic literatures. Then question 3 is in the 12th verse. Hare Krishna, new arrivals. We got started without you. I'm just going through a little document I have here of outlining the actual 6 questions that are asked by the sages at Naimisharanya because, and I'm doing this now to catch up, because actually the verse we deal with today deals with the 5th question. So I'm just working through, well, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. There it is. I'm working through the questions in this little document that I have here. Question 3, tell why Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared. So that question is in verse 12. And this question is answered in the 2nd chapter, 34th verse. And the answer is simply to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. In addition, this question is answered later on this is very nice, in the 1st canto, 8th chapter, 35th verse, 9th canto, 4th chapter, 61st verse, 10th canto, 8th chapter, 48th, 50th verse, and 10th canto, 33rd chapter to 37th verse. Then question 4 is found in the verse we did last week. Tell us of the acts of the Lord's. Tell us of the acts the Lord performs in relationship to creating the material world. This question is answered in chapter 2, verses 30 to 33, wherein the Bhagavatam explains how, wherein Sutta explains how Vasudeva creates the material substance and enters into it as the Purusha incarnations. In addition, cantos 3 and 4 explain the creation of the universe. So what you start to see as we go along here is that these 6 questions give rise to the rest of the Bhagavatam, but especially in the 2nd and 3rd chapter, as it says up here a little higher. Sri Jiva Goswami has commented that of these 6 questions, 4 are answered in chapter 2 and 2 are answered in chapter 3. But that those answers are only a synopsis. Things develop from there. So then we have question 4 last week. Now today, question 5, which is verse 118. But then Jiva Goswami says, and again in 19 to 20. So it's actually 3 verses which make up the question, which is describe the activities of the incarnations of the Lord. Then the Lord's incarnations are described within the 3rd chapter. So this is question 5 and 6 are dealt with in the 3rd chapter. The Lord's incarnations are described within the within chapter 3 of the 1st canto. Descriptions of the incarnations are explained throughout the remainder of the Bhagavatam. But again, it's a synopsis. So, does anyone want me to send them that document?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji, please send them to us, please, kindly.
Do I have everyone's email, or is there some other way I can do it? Can I drop it into the chat here now?
Yes, Prabhu. That's good.
I could just copy the whole document, couldn't I? Let's go. Where are we? Edit. Select all. Copy. Then we'll come out of share mode and we'll go into chat and I'll drop it in. It says, no, it's not going to do it. What's that say? Dropbox. All right. Just, can anybody help me here? I clicked file on the chat and it says.
Do you maybe want to it to me and I can get it out to everybody else because you have my email address.
I have your email address.
Yeah, let's do that. And I'll work out how to get it to everybody else.
All right. Okay.
You can also put in as in the WhatsApp.
I can drop it in WhatsApp now, can I?
Yep.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think that will be better. WhatsApp will be better.
All right.
You
Okay.
drop it to me, Prabhu. I will send it to everyone in WhatsApp immediately.
All right. All right. Super Krishna.
Sorry, Nick.
No, that's fine. Whatever works.
Document. Six questions by the sages. There we go. No preview available. Doesn't matter. There we go. There it is. I've just sent it. It's on its way to you, Super Krishna. There you go.
Got it.
Okay, moving right along here, folks. I'll share the screen again and we can go into those verses. Okay. Where's Sarah? I'm worried about Sarah. She's not with us.
She's all good.
She's all good?
She's at the farm, yeah.
She's at the farm. She's at New School.
Yeah.
So that is definitely all good.
So she's good. She's immersed in this.
She is, isn't she?
Kirtan.
Anita, you're hiding again. What is wrong with you? You're hiding.
No, I'm here, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Haribol.
I'm here.
Okay,
Not hiding anymore.
Okay. Let's have a look at these three verses. Atakyahi hare damin navatara kata subaha. Shubaha, there it is. Shubaha. Lila vidadata swairam ishvarasyatma mayaya. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers. Then we go to the next verse. Next, come on. Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame. Yachchinvatam rasagyanam swadu swadu pade pade. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Then the next verse. Kritavan kila karmani saha ramena keshavaha. Atimatyani Bhagavan Guda Kapata Manushaha. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played just like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. So I'll go back and we'll read all three purports as one. And then we can have some discussion or some questions. So for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material worlds, the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead himself, appears in many thousands of forms of incarnations. And the specific adventures found in those transcendental forms are all auspicious. Both those who are present during such activities and those who hear the transcendental narrations of such activities are benefited. That's a very important point we'll come back to. There is a great difference between mundane stories, fiction, or history, and the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The histories of the whole universe contain references to the past times of the incarnations of the Lord. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord, and therefore remain fresh even after repeated hearings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama Shloka indicates that literature which is not meant for nescience or nescience. Mundane literature is in the mode of darkness or ignorance, whereas transcendental literature is quite different. Transcendental literature is above the mode of darkness, and its light becomes more luminous with progressive reading and realization of the transcendental subject matter. The so-called liberated persons are never satisfied by the repetition of the words Aham Brahmasmi. Such artificial realization of Brahman becomes hackneyed, and so to relish real pleasure, they turn to the narrations of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are not so fortunate turn to altruism and worldly philanthropy. This means that Mayavad philosophy is mundane, whereas the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental. The doctrines of anthropomorphism and zoomorphism are never applicable to Sri Krishna or the personality of Godhead. The theory that a man becomes God by dint of penance and austerities is very much rampant nowadays, especially in India. Since Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were detected by the sages and saints to be the personality of Godhead, as indicated in revealed scriptures, many unscrupulous men have created their own incarnations. This process of concocting an incarnation of God has become an ordinary business, especially in Bengal. Any popular personality with few traits of mystic powers will display. Anita, could you mute yourself? Where any popular personality with a few traits of mystic powers will display some feat of jugglery and easily become an incarnation of God by popular vote. Lord Sri Krishna was not that type of incarnation. He was actually the personality of Godhead from the very beginning of his appearance. He appeared before his so-called mother as four-armed Vishnu. Then, at the request of his mother, he became like a human child and at once left her for another devotee at Gokula, where he was accepted as the son of Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda Mata. Similarly, Sri Baladev, the counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna, was also considered a human child born of another wife of Sri Vasudeva. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that his birth and deeds are transcendental, and that anyone who is so fortunate as to know the transcendental nature of his birth and deeds will at once become liberated and eligible to return to the kingdom of God. So, knowledge of the transcendental nature of the birth and deeds of Lord Sri Krishna is sufficient for liberation. In the Bhagavatam, the transcendental nature of the Lord is described in 9 cantos, and in the 10th canto, his specific pastimes are taken up. All this becomes known as one's reading of this literature progresses. It is important to note here, however, that the Lord exhibited his divinity even from the lap of his mother, that his deeds are all superhuman. He lifted Govardhan Hill at the age of 7, and that all these acts definitely prove him to be actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet, due to his mystic covering, he was always accepted as an ordinary human child by his so-called mother and father and other relatives. Whenever some Herculean task was performed by him, the father and mother took it otherwise, and they remained satisfied with unflinching parental love for their son. As such, the sages of Naimisharanya describe him as apparently resembling a human being, but actually he is the Supreme Almighty Personality of Godhead. Okay. A lot here, again, as usual, a lot to deal with. Where are we? 17. I went back one too many, sorry. Back to 18. Oh, wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal potency, his internal powers. Auspicious is a word. Auspicious. Auspicious is a word we don't hear a lot of these days. I mean, can anyone really remember hearing that in normal conversation, that, oh, that's an auspicious thing? It's not a word that is used a lot in present lingua franca.
Yeah, unless you are discussing with devotees.
Unless you are discussing it with the devotees. Nicely put. And here we see it's an adjective, auspicious, from the 1590s, means of a good omen, from the Latin word auspicium, divination by observing the flight of birds. From auspex, the genitive of auspicious, and us. So what does auspex mean? Auspex, one who observes flights of birds for the purpose of taking omens. From the 1590s, from Latin auspex, interpreter of omens given by birds. From the root awi. Now this is very interesting. This is very interesting. These words that here, these words awi and spec, these are what are called Proto-Indo. Everybody can see this screen at the moment, yes? Proto-Indo-European root, meaning bird, awi. And then there is spec, Proto-Indo-European root, meaning to observe. Now these so-called roots are totally speculative. There is no written record of any language which could be defined as Proto-Indo-European. This is something that came into existence actually out of envy of Sanskrit, because when the European scholars, who were at that time, the classical languages were Greek and Italian and Latin, and they thought these were root languages because from Latin you get French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and a good chunk of English. The English language is described as a language of mainly borrowed words that actually come from other languages. There's no organic English language. whereas Latin and Greek, they are actually apparently organic languages, and they are very formal in their structure in terms of what are called declensions and conjugations. That's a whole other subject. But anyway, when the scholars of these what are called classical languages and the literatures of those languages, Latin and Greek, came in contact with Sanskrit, they found a language that was inconceivably more complex than all of those languages put together. And actually, this language of Sanskrit is actually the root of all Indo-European languages. But because they didn't want anything Indian to be recognized in that way, the idea was put forward that these languages, Sanskrit, Latin, Greek, they come from some older language, now lost, and the roots of that language are found in these languages. And what you do, if you get this dictionary, it's a very good dictionary to have. It's called Etym Online. Etymology means tracing out where words come from. So the etymon, this is what we're looking at now. We've gone from auspicious to how auspex is the root of auspicious, and it's about observing the flights of birds for the purpose of taking omens. And then they say from the PIE word, root awi spec, observer of birds, from the root awi, bird, plus the root spec, to observe. Now, if you go down here, awi and spec, very interesting, because all these words here in the English language are said to arise and have this root as a part of them, and giving rise to them through the languages that they come. Most of these words here all come from Latin, as do most of the words down here for spec. But then look at this. It is the hypothetical source of. Hypothetical means we're guessing, because there is no written evidence of this. And then evidence for its existence is provided by, and look at the first example, Sanskrit, V. And then in this one, Sanskrit, sparsity, seas. Doesn't say what V is there. There's another dictionary you can get, if you really want to be thoroughgoing about all this, called the, we'll have a look at that. I hope you don't mind this. I hope this is not annoying anyone, but I personally love all this stuff. Where are we? Come on, what's happening?
Knowledge in any respect is welcome, bro.
Sorry?
Knowledge in any respect is welcome.
So there's another dictionary here. I can send people the link for if they want it. It's called the Monier-Williams Sanskrit Dictionary, 1899. This is, and it's now online. It's a very complex dictionary. And this is the Rolls-Royce of Sanskrit English dictionaries. There are many. So if we just type in there V and look at that, what do we get? Come on. What's happening? Maybe it's not working today. No matches found. All right, so we'll put, what's happening? We'll put via. It's not working for me today. Oh, head word only. Yeah, it's a little more complicated than I can handle at the moment. Sorry, folks. We'll go back to this. So auspicious means what? It's a good omen. There's a good omen in it. It augurs well. Let's put auspicious. This is another very nice dictionary called the Free Dictionary. It's got a lot of auspicious. Okay. Auspicious, favorable or propitious. We'll look at propitious in a minute. Favorable or propitious, archaic, prosperous or fortunate. And then you can look at the I never get that word right. Thesaurus. The thesaurus of it. Auspicious. It is definitely not ill-omened. It is definitely not unpropitious, and it is not definitely not infelicitous. These are words you don't hear much of anymore. But it's about something being fortunate, prosperous, rosy, opportune, and then we have propitious and felicitous. We can look at that and just click on it, and it takes us to that. Felicitous, what is the actual dictionary meaning of felicitous? Another word from Latin, meaning admirably suited, exhibiting an agreeably appropriate manner or style, marked by happiness or good fortune. And then we go back and we can have a look at what's the one before? Propitious, advantageous, auspicious, opportune, full of promise, bright, lucky, fortunate, prosperous, rosy. Very nice. There we are. Presenting favorable circumstances or showing signs of a favorable outcome, merciful or kindly. So this is all very interesting because here we see the word auspicious, the auspicious adventures of the pastimes of the Lord. Auspicious, everything in regard to Krishna is all of those things we just looked at. It's all good for all people in all times and all places, and never otherwise. Absolutely, always like that. Never tainted in any way, never less than that. Never otherwise in any. Thing about Krishna, Krishna is absolute goodness in his nature, and he means only well for anyone and everyone. He is the well. Can you hear me? It says my internet connection is not stable. Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll just come back here. Krishna says, I am the well-wishing friend of every living entity. I'm equal to everyone. I'm not envious of anyone. I don't hate anybody. But that main point there, I am the well-wishing friend of every living entity. This is something that a lot of people actually have difficulty coming to terms with, because based on a poor fund of knowledge, very often you get if you get involved in preaching, which I hope you're all doing to some extent or another, to whatever degree you're able to, I'm sure you all come across this question from people. Well, if God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world? If God only means well for anybody, why doesn't he stop all the suffering? Why do people have to suffer? How can you say God is all good if this is going on? If something's not good for me, why doesn't he stop me doing it? You come across that? Yeah? It's very
Every
common.
day, all the time, Prabhu, all the time from non-devotees. This is the first question they ask, why Krishna will not stop, this coronavirus or so many atrocities, this, that, common question.
Yes. Well, why are you here is the response. Why are you here? You have to understand. You have to begin with that understanding that I am here in this material world as an act of my own free will. I'm here because I choose to be here. Well, I didn't choose to be born here, there, or anywhere, did I? I didn't choose being born in a whatever situation I'm in. If it's not good, if it is good, well, I'll take yes. This is the one I chose. But this is all based upon a poor fund of knowledge. And therefore, as the point is being made here, one must repeatedly hear, actually, one must repeatedly be hearing the truth, the reality of the totality of reality. We are in a relative reality at the moment. We're in a reality where, yes, suffering is everywhere. Everybody's getting old. Everybody's going to die. Nobody wants these things. And if there's a God, then he's a pretty poor creator. This is a pretty shoddy operation here. This doesn't seem to me to be the work of an absolute being. I could do better than this. I could organize things better than this. This is ridiculous. And that's what they call mind at the end of its tether. Without proper fund of knowledge as to the nature of the totality of reality, the reality that we are observing now, which we think is the all in all on the basis of a poor fund of knowledge, will drive an intelligent person to absolute desperation, because there's got to be more than this. But if there's no knowledge of what is more than this, then it's not surprising people become atheistic. There can't be a God in charge of this. What kind of idiot would do this kind of thing? And that's actually a pretty fair proposition. What kind of idiot would deliberately put me in this situation? Well, the actual idiot that put you in this situation is you. Because like you're all here today as an act of your own free will. You chose to come and listen to this class. Nobody forced you to. You come because you want to, because you have a desire. And this principle of free will has to be understood, because people say, well, why are we forced to do this? Why are we forced to do that? Why doesn't God, if there is a God, why doesn't he stop us? Well, because you're in the material world in the first place because of an act of will. You desired to come here. And now you're here. And as a result of being here, you have to accept the circumstances, the controls of this world. We don't have control of this world. We're entangled by our attachment to our desire to control this world. But the reality is we have no control. We're all completely controlled. We're under very strict laws. And as we looked at in this verse, what does Prabhupada say? I think it's in the second, it's in the second purport we read today. Very important. And that is, yes, mundane literature. Is it this one or the third one? I can't remember. We read a lot today. But it's about how material things are, yes, here it is. Here it is. Anyone may read, well, let's go back up here. There is a great difference between mundane stories, fiction or history, and the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The history of the whole universe contains references to the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. I'll read that. The history of the whole universe. That's a very interesting point. The histories of the whole universe, which are books like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas. They are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. Whereas mundane stories, fiction or history, mundane history does not deal with the whole universe. We learn, like, you know, you grow up in whatever culture you grow up in, and you learn the history of that country, that tribe, that nation, or whatever it is. You learn about that, and that's handed down to you. But that, you know, where do we live? We just live on a little spot. If you think of where I'm standing, no matter how big it is, what's the biggest country in the world is Russia, isn't it? So I say I'm Russian. Well, you know, you go 5,000 miles out into space. Where's Russia? You can't even see this planet, and it's just one little speck in a vast universe. So you come across this statement: the histories of the whole universe contain references to the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. Now, this is a very interesting point, because, you know, the idea of Stan, Hindustan, Rajasthan, this land, this place, Pakistan. Actually, the whole universe is a Leela Stan for the Lord. One of the purposes for the existence of this universe is for the Lord to enact pastimes. Actually, the only purpose of anything is for the Lord to enact pastimes and enjoy rasa, tastes, rasas, tastes. So actually, the actual history of the universe is about that. Pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. And therefore, these histories remain fresh even after repeated readings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. The opposite of static is ecstatic. Stasis means that which doesn't change. Stasis comes from the Greek, and ex means out of that which is static. Excuse me. And as it says here, matter is static. There is no dynamism. There is no movement in matter. Material things are dead. And what is the history of the world? It's the history of the activities of people who are dead. Whereas the Supreme Lord, he begins his instruction to Arjuna with the simple statement, Na tvevaham jatu nasham na tvam neme janadipaha. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. The Lord is not a product of dead matter. Dead matter is inauspicious because it is just that. It is dead. And we're carrying a big bag of dead matter here. This is my bag. That's your bag. But it's none other than a bag of material elements. You know that Beatles song, you got to carry that weight a long time. That weight actually is this dead body. We are animating the body, but the body, being matter, is dead. So anything related to stories, mundane fictions, mundane histories is dead, static, and actually tasteless. The phrase used in the Bhagavatam is chewing the chewed. And the example given for that is you get a piece of sugar cane and you chew it, and the beautiful sweet taste comes out of it. But then if you spit, then you chew it until nothing more is coming, then you spit it out. And if somebody picks that up and starts chewing it, they're going to get no taste from it. Or they might get the slightest whiff of a taste, but then nothing, no matter how much you chew and chew and chew. Things become one, as it says here, one is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama shloka indicates that literature which is not meant for nescience. Uttama, tama means nescience, ut means above. Shloka means it's a form of verse, shloka. So Uttama Shloka indicates that literature which is not meant for nescience. Therefore, it is all auspicious. Let's go back and have another quick look at auspicious. Where are we? What did I do? I did the wrong thing. I stopped sharing the screen, whereas I should have just flipped to another thing. Sorry, folks. Where were we? There. Then here we go back to auspicious. Back up here, auspicious. Auspicious. Look at it again in the light of what I just said. Auspicious. Presenting favorable circumstances or showing signs of a favorable outcome. The favorable outcome. What is the sign of the favorable outcome? Well, that's here also. It is ever fresh, never boring. Transcendental literature is above the mode of darkness, and its light becomes more luminous with progressive reading and realization of the transcendental subject matter. The so-called liberated persons are never satisfied by the repetition of the words Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Such artificial realization of Brahman becomes hackneyed. It becomes hackneyed. Well, there's another. Let's look up hackneyed. What's hackneyed mean? Does anybody have an immediate meaning for hackneyed? Very interesting, isn't it, when you get into words? Trite, so overused as to have become uninteresting. Very interesting, very trite. That's another interesting word, trite. Used till so common as to have lost its novelty and interest. Does it sound familiar? You can't go on repeating material things over and over and over again without this arising. I remember one time Devanrita Maharaj was talking about a survey that he'd read where people were surveyed about how much of your time do you feel happy and how much of your time do you feel unhappy? And actually, it worked out that 5% of your time you feel happy, 5% of your time you feel unhappy, and 90% of your time you feel bored. And that is really the reality of material existence. It is boring because it's the same old thing over and over and over and over and over again with actually no taste. There may have been some taste at some time, and we see that in material life. Something new, it's something new, somebody new in my life. And you're into it. But then it's like, same old. Always happens, because this is the influence of the mode of passion and mixed with ignorance. We are in ignorance of our actual nature, and we are misidentifying ourselves with matter. And through contact with the mode of passion, we get into situations where the indication of the mode of passion is that in the beginning, it seems like nectar, but it ends up poison. Whereas in our contaminated state, it seems like poison in the beginning, but it ends up with the taste of nectar. And as Lord Chaitanya says about the Sankirtan Yajna, it gives us a taste for that nectar for which we are always anxious. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No? Any comments, questions or comments?
Prabhu, I want to ask one question, which always comes to my mind, if I may. Okay, so my question is that we hear all the time that those liberated souls who are in Vaikuntha, they once they are there, then they never come back to the material world. So, and I think we have been told that because we desire to be here, we wanted to enjoy the material world. That's why we are here. So, is this not against the principle that once you are there, then you will not come back to this material world? And then now that we are here, if we go back again to spiritual world, then would the same thing not happen again, that we might again desire to be in the material world? So, and then again we come here.
First of all, we come to the material world by choice. And then we can choose to go back to the spiritual world. And when we get back there, we still have our free will. We always have our free will. But have you ever heard of the saying, what once bitten, twice shy? Yes? So, but the fact of the matter is, you can come to the material world and you can never leave if you want. You don't have to leave the material. You don't have to come and you don't have to leave. It's all based upon your desire. But your desires also become tempered by your experience. And our experience of material life that leads us to wanting something else is that it is miserable and temporary. Now, most people, they say, well, you got to take the good with the bad, don't dwell on the bad, look for the good, live for the good. You have to, and that's life. But then there are a few jivas who are not satisfied with that. And Krishna is within the heart. And when you are in that situation of actually, I've had enough, I'm not satisfied anymore, there's got to be something more than this, then you become directed to a bona fide spiritual master where you hear the truth. And then again, you're faced with the choice, as we see with Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna hears everything from Krishna, and then Krishna says, you consider these things, and then you do whatever you like. It's your choice. Krishna never interferes with your free will. So therefore, theoretically, you can exercise, you can be in this, you can come from the material world to, you can come from the spiritual world to the material world. At some point, you can then make your way back to the spiritual world, and you are still free to come back to the material world. But you don't, because you have lost all taste for it. You cannot actually leave the material world until you have absolutely no desire to ever be here again. There's nothing here that you want anymore. So therefore, it is also said that Krishna doesn't want you to come to the material world, but he sanctions it. He lets you come because he doesn't interfere with your free will. But once you are here, he doesn't want you to leave until, or he won't allow you to leave until and unless you have absolutely no desire to be here now or ever again. So it really comes down to understanding these principles that because we are living beings, we have the capacity to desire by our free will. You know, now there's always the big argument in this material world. Do we have free will, or is everything determined? Are we just like a complex combination of reactions to things? We have no free will. With something like the Pavlov's dog experiment. Every time the dog is conditioned that every time the bell rings, he knows he's going to get something to eat. So as soon as the bell rings, he starts to salivate. We're just reactive entities. Or do we have free will? Well, it appears actually we don't have any free will in the material world. And actually, in one sense, that's true because we've put ourselves under the strict laws of material nature. But we did that as an act of free will. We used our free will, or as Prabhupada says so eloquently and regularly, we misused our free will. But Krishna never interferes with that because the essence of the relationship between Krishna and all living entities is love, and love cannot be forced. It's an act of free will. So there's a very interesting phrase in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the fifth, what I call the fifth section of the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about this, where in 61 and 62 and 63, rather, Krishna says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Then, but a person free from all attachment and aversion, and able to control his senses, listen to this, through regulative principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Regulative principles of freedom. When we think, well, if I'm free, where's the question of regulation? Well, I can just do whatever I like. Isn't that freedom, to do whatever I like? Well, no, we need to understand that in this material world, there's sequences of action, and then there are consequences of action. And we are bound up by the consequences of our actions in the material world. And to actually become free from these things, we have to follow the path of regulated principles of freedom that are given by the Lord to show us the way out of this material world. And we have to choose to take it. We have to choose to follow them. And the only way we're going to choose to do that is if we really don't want to be here anymore. And then when we're out, we don't want to come back. So it's even before we start the journey out, our mindset needs to be, I don't want to be here. And when I get out, I'll never come back. But having said that, you're still free to come back if you want to. It all comes down to what do you want? What do you want? And therefore, naturally, by delineating what I want, immediately that infers what I don't want. I want to be cool. Therefore, what does that mean? I don't want to be hot. Or I want to be warm. What does that mean? I don't want to be cold. Yes? So I want to be free. What does that mean? I don't want to be in bondage. What is the bondage? The bondage is the three modes of material nature. Guna means rope. We're bound up by the three modes of material nature. And Krishna presents the whole Bhagavad Gita to give us the conclusion he gives in verse 26 of the 14th chapter, where he says, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatichaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the platform of Brahman. And on that platform of Brahman, we enter into Shuddha Sattva. We enter into a situation in which we actually begin unalloyed devotional service to the Lord, where our only desire is to love him, to be in love with him, without any other motivation, for no other purpose, just to love Krishna, to be in love with Krishna. And when we do fall back, and I say back, when we do fall back in love with Krishna, that is ever fresh. That is ever fresh. And we never deviate from that again. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. You ask very nice questions, Anita. Keep asking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone ever have any other questions? Or any comments?
No problem. I'll give you a call later, Bhagavad Ashraya.
Sorry?
I will give you a call later regarding the programs. So, yeah.
Programs? Okay. I'll be back in Sydney.
Oh. His video is frozen now. Yeah. Can anyone hear him? No.
No,
right?
no.
I think he may have to reconnect.